Hey, I'm TJ Bramblett, head of the digital marketing team at TIDWIT. And today I'm here with Will, the CEO of TIDWIT, and we just kind of want to have a conversation about what TIDWIT is and what TIDWIT isn't.
Hey, TJ.
Will, what's up?
Good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you here. So I want to ask you some questions. We've obviously talked a lot but prior to this. When you have a technology like TIDWIT that's innovative, it's sometimes hard for people to figure out what it is and what it's not, and they want to put it in a box. So I just thought we would talk about that some today.
Yeah, it's a common thing that we get with customers is when we're talking with them, what they try to pigeonhole us into areas that are traditional kind of within our space, but not directly what we do, and so we have to kind of go through an educational process of telling them why we're different and what's so exciting about TIDWIT's digital ecosystem network, essentially. So it's always a challenge, but it's also a great opportunity to tell them our story and why we're different.
And what are the areas where you see people misunderstanding TIDWIT the most?
I think it depends on the workload of the ecosystem. Like, for instance, if we're talking to people who are primarily interested in learning as a workload on top of the ecosystem, they'll kind of pigeonhole us with some of the learning providers. And they'll say, hey, do you develop content, or are you content aggregators or stuff like that? And in reality, we're none of that. We don't develop content and we don't aggregate content. What we do is we simply connect the content publishers with as organizations with the content consumers as organizations, and so we create this ecosystem between the publishers and the consumers, barrier free, and we make it really easy for them to share this kind of knowledge. So it's a different kind of learning workload or learning experience, if you will, on top of ecosystems. But underlying this is the ecosystem. In other words, we can't really do what we're doing without having the ecosystem connecting these two companies together. So that comes first. Then you build the workloads, and then the knowledge starts happening and the sharing starts happening.
Yeah. So as a digital marketer, I certainly see things through a little my own lens, right? And one of the ways that I've always seen TIDWIT is, I think about social networks, and I think about how social networks connect people to each other, right? They connect individuals to each other. And then there are tools like some of the ones you've mentioned, LMSs and things like that, which are basically a portal for connecting people to content. But there isn't really a place out there outside of TIDWIT to connect one organization to another organization to another organization in an ecosystem, but even so, 1-to-1, 1-to-2, and those connect. There isn't a tool to connect organizations. It's just people.
Correct.
Or they're one-dimensional, right? And so that's how I think about it a lot.
It's 100%, and you see that in many workloads. Like, you're in digital marketing, so you see a lot of digital marketing tools out there that are focused on kind of pushing knowledge or content or messaging to users. Now, they could be business users, but they're users. But you don't see tools that bring together an organization in all its might and its extensibility to another organization with all its might and all its extensibility, and kind of bringing them seamlessly. And that's really what TIDWIT as a digital ecosystem network is doing. Now, something interesting that you mentioned is not only is this our B2B play, which is pure B2B at the organizational level, but some of the key differentials that also happen is, and you alluded to that, is the connectivity to the network. So you have organizations that kind of try to connect to other organizations for, let's say, either learning or marketing, etc. And they try to do it using APIs and things like this. And you could accomplish something of the sort, but most organizations have multiple connections. So if they're going to try and do this, one-to-one connections with all of their ecosystem players, pretty soon that becomes very complex, because APIs change with time and tools change. And if you're constantly kind of running behind API integration, it becomes complex. With the TIDWIT Digital Ecosystem Network, you're actually connecting once to the network. And then from that point on, anyone else that's on the network, you can accomplish this connectivity seamlessly for any one of the workloads. So in the beginning, you might say, you know what, I'm really just interested in connecting to some of my largest partners for readiness and learning. That's a great workload. So you create an ecosystem there, but pretty soon your marketing guys are going to come running in and they're going to say, hey, listen, we're pushing learning and readiness. What if we wanted to push through the same ecosystem marketing or sales enablement? And so you end up being able to do the same thing on the same infrastructure without needing extra APIs, etc. The same guys might say, hey, listen, we're doing this with this organization. How difficult would it be to do it to organization B, C, D, E, F? That's a network. So the answer is it's not difficult at all. In fact, you don't need to do anything, because the minute that you connect to the network, you can connect to anybody that's on the network, not as a person, but as an organization, maintaining things like compliance and privacy and all that kind of stuff. So
right, yeah. So it's not just a one-to-one relationship between content and a consumer. You can you can partner with people. You can connect to people who are one tier down, multiple tiers down. Get all the analytics on that in a way that you couldn't in any other way. So it does seem like TIDWIT, the network component of it, the organization to organization networking component is really powerful. And I like that you also mentioned the workloads, which I kind of think of as plugins, because people say, well, why is TIDWIT not like an LMS or something like that? And the truth is that TIDWIT is a powerful inter-organizational network which has these workloads which allow you to function a little bit like that in the context of a network, but it's everything is in TIDWIT. So you have like the learning workload and the marketing workload, and these things where without TIDWIT, people are using 5 or 6 other tools which are not even accomplishing half of what TIDWIT can accomplish.
Correct. And one thing I think that we kind of differentiate ourselves from some of the what we call endpoint tools, as let's say an LMS as an example. So we don't really go in and rip and replace LMSs and replace them with TIDWIT. That's not really what we do. We actually provide the ecosystem and the workload together with the content that's being pushed by the publishers themselves to their endpoint. So you can imagine an organization, large organization, let's say a very large consulting company, and they've got 100,000, 200,000 users on an LMS that they use day in, day out. It would be delusional of us to go in and think, oh, we're going to rip and replace that LMS. Instead, what we do is we kind of bring in the ecosystem, connect that consulting firm into the ecosystem, and connect that specific tool, which is that LMS, into the ecosystem as well. By doing that, essentially they get a constant feed of the content that they want or that their users need in order to meet their business objectives. So in reality, what we're doing is we're providing an ecosystem and a network connectivity to a whole host of organizations into the tools that already exist. So if anything, we tell our customers, don't feel threatened by TIDWIT, feel empowered by TIDWIT, because essentially your tool is going to be able to do so much more by having so much more rich content, be it learning, be it marketing, be it sales enablement, be it support, etc. So any one of these workloads.
So, I mean, it does seem like the key to it is this organization to organization network that is multi-noded, and you can connect in any way you can consume content, you can publish content, you can share with end users, other companies, and you just can't do that in any other platform nearly as effectively.
Correct.
Talk about the reporting aspect as well and the insights component, because one of when you bring everyone into a network together, same platform, you have a lot of benefits to be able to visualize what's happening.
You bet, and especially since the issue of privacy and compliance is key and top on everybody's mind, and the organizations are really hesitating in sending their users to other organizations' systems. They want to kind of they've committed to their shareholders and to the market in general to protect their privacy and all that kind of stuff. So they've kind of firewalled their users into the sources or let's say where they allow them to access. Now, on the one hand, that provides protection. On the other hand, it might impede them from getting the knowledge that they need. So what we're doing is we're overcoming this by being able to provision data to those guys that they need to get their, their business objectives accomplished within environments that they are comfortable with. Now, how does that tie into the what you just mentioned, which is the metrics? Well, the question on a lot of organizations' minds is, okay, wait a minute. So if I'm not pulling the user into my system, how am I going to get the activity of that user? Well, it turns out with a digital ecosystem network like TIDWIT, you don't have to make a choice. You can actually get the best of both worlds because you're pushing out the knowledge for it to be consumed in environments that are comfortable in its consumption. But at the same time, you can pull the metrics, PII sanitized, compliant, etc., into your own organization. So you still get the data that you need when you need it. So that's one element of it. But because it's a network and you really don't know how far your content can reach, particularly if you have let's say a multi-tier supply chain, then in that case, you can actually be getting line of sight 5-6 tiers removed from where you are. You really can't do this on a system which is a single tier portal. But with a digital ecosystem network, you can actually go n tiers down and still get a full line of sight as to where your content is being consumed, not necessarily by by John Doe, but you will know that a person X consumed it through this entire supply chain all the way up to you. A digital ecosystem network allows you to have full line of sight visibility across the entire network.
The digital ecosystem network is a newer thing, and I think this is one of those things where we want to keep having these conversations to kind of help the market understand what TIDWIT is and what it's not, and how to think about how they can add it to their organization. Because whenever you have a new technology like TIDWIT, I think companies have a hard time figuring out where it fits in with their stack or whatever, or how they're going to integrate it in. So I think this type of conversation is a good start.
Yeah, thanks for the questions, and great having this conversation. Let's do more of it.
All right, let's do it. Yeah, so we'll be back soon.